Awesome. We are getting going today. Build Mastermind. This group is all about helping people grow their business, whether you're a single agent or you're on a team or you're a team leader. Definitely the place to be to continue to evolve and build. One thing I've learned over the last 7 years is the fast track ticket to growing your business is to get in the right room with the right people that are already doing what you want to do. And this is a version of that. This group started very privately with my good buddy Jim, my good buddy Ed, and my dear wife Rachel, really for our teams to learn and collaborate. And then we've kind of expanded out, and now it's a real academy. So that's kind of the history on how this got started. Jim runs a great business and team out of Massachusetts and out of Kansas City and a few other markets. And our team is out of Everett, Washington, just north of Seattle. So we all do, 200-300 deals a year. I think Ed's starting to push that number up a little bit higher too, which is awesome. And so our businesses are very similar. A lot of the values that we lead our businesses and our people by are also aligned as well. So today, though, we're talking about buyer consultations. Like, this is a hot ticket item right now. If you're, looking at the news at all, you're hearing everything from NAR about how, buyer commissions are changing. There's a lot of fear. Most of the fear is about the unknown. I'm personally, and I know our team is not scared at all. In fact, we're really, really excited. In our market, we're in the NWMLS here in Washington State. We have had the option to pay no buyer commission for 2-3 years now. So it's like something we're pretty used to. And so what we're going to share with you today is what's been working during that climate that's now about to roll out nationally. The kind of exciting part to me is we have no stated commissions going forward, right? So there's no like starting value. And I don't know about your market, but in our market, commission percentages have started like going down over the last 5 years. Sure, home prices have gone up, but the commission percentage has started going down. So it used to be like 3% average in our market, and now it's more like 2.5%. And so the opportunity I see is to really get 3% on every deal. You just got to build it into your offer economics. And I think that's a big opportunity if you can really articulate your value to your buyers, if you can follow a proven process, and if you can negotiate like a badass with the listing agent as well. Okay. So anything you want to add to that, Jim?
Yeah, well, I wish ours was at 2.5 average. We're actually lower, but we've been able to. I think the biggest thing is we've been able to put some deals together with zero buyer agent commission offered on MLS on both the listing side and the buyer side, and every time everybody got paid. So it's not something to be scared about. It's something to be educated about. That there's it's just like you said. I agree. It's instead of like having this. I think many agents at 2 or 3% are overpaid, and some are underpaid. So it's like we get the opportunity now to actually provide value and actually get paid what we're worth, which is a gift.
One of the interesting things to me coming into real estate was like, oh, it's kind of weird that we all make the same or charge the same, I guess. We don't make the same, but we charge the same. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I always use the analogy of an attorney, right? It's like if you hire an attorney, you could hire an associate or you could hire a partner, right? And the difference is experience and what you're going to pay them per hour. And so like the associate is typically like a newer attorney that's still learning. They are going to charge a lot less per hour. The partner is typically the badass that's been in the business for a long time, charges significantly more per hour, but is able to drive really productive outcomes much, much quicker. So it's kind of like that same analogy when it comes to real estate. Like, why would an agent that's done 2 or 3 transactions charge the same as somebody that's done 2, 3, 600 transactions and brings all of that experience to the table? Because a lot of what people are paying for is that experience, right? That is something I just really want to emphasize. But the way I want to start this is I want to kind of dispel some myths about the buyer side, just because having been like a focused buyer for a couple of years in our business, it always frustrated me that people like thought negatively of buyer agents. And some of those myths, have you guys ever heard that saying? I freaking hate this statement, list to last. It makes my skin crawl when I hear that. I've heard that from so many people. Like, list to last sounds great, but how is that a business model, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense. How about top producers only work with sellers? Only new agents should work with buyers, right? These are all myths that I've heard. Have you guys heard any of these, Ed, Jim, Rachel?
Well, those are national myths. Those are, everybody hears those.
Right. So let me give you the truth. You can build a massive business off of buyers. The way that Rachel and I structured our team when we started, and really for the first like 5, 6 years, this is only a recent change in the last year. We kind of divided and conquered. Rachel handled exclusively our listing business. I exclusively handled our buyer business. And so that's all I did. And I was able to build and systematize this journey to be super scalable. What really like fascinated me about the buy side is it seemed like compared to the listing side of things, there wasn't a lot of defined process. It was just kind of like, you got show them a house, and then like when you find something they like, you write the offer. Like there's really like no formalization of what you're doing, how you're going to do it. There's no expectation set. It's just kind of like whimsical to what the buyer wants to do. And I didn't,
Mike, why do you think that happened that way, Mike? I think I've got, in my mind, I think I know, but I want to hear your thought on that.
well, honestly, I just think it's the traditional way real estate's been done. You know what I mean? Like that's how it's gone down for decades. And so that's kind of the accepted norm. And agents haven't really taken the time to systematize that part of their business. So they just, when someone wants to be a buyer with them, they just kind of start showing up as the agents, like really informally. And not to use the attorney analogy again, but it's kind of like hiring an attorney without signing a retainer agreement. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make it.
I think you're dead on, and the other part to that, you're saying they didn't put a formalized process in. Well, they didn't put a formalized process in because they didn't know how to talk about representing them and being their buyer's agent. And that's where everybody goes off the tracks, right? When it's time to have that conversation to formalize, so we go through a process, that's where it all goes off the tracks. And it's, I just want to go see a house, and they're like, okay. I mean, that's
like,
what happens.
I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Yes Man, but it's very much like the Yes Man approach.
Yeah, yes.
Hey, yeah, sure, I'll go show you this house. And yeah, sure, I could write an offer, right? Like it's no wonder that we're now having to articulate why we make any money on the buy side, right?
Right.
To answer your question, I think it's been the accepted norm in our industry for a very long time. And it's only recently started to pivot and change. We have just, especially our three teams, have been doing this for like years now. You know what I mean? So we were kind of having these conversations years ago, and now they've just kind of become top of mind for the nation, right? So that's kind of what I think there. Would you agree with that, Jim, or would you disagree?
So we didn't really implement this, hey, this is our price or this is our commission, until about a year ago when I saw this coming down the pike. I said, we can't just accept what's out there. And we just, so we started a year ago where, a lot of times buyers are bringing money to the table to pay us because we're not able to structure it in the deal the way everything's out there right now. And, for the most part, it's just become what is normal to our clients.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is people don't want to have a commission conversation. That's why they work with buyers versus sellers. Mm-hmm. They don't want to have a commission conversation. Well, you got to have it with everybody.
Right. Yeah, and the listing side has always been so formal and structured. Like there's a listing presentation. Some people even like memorize like verbatim what they say at listing appointments, which is kind of weird and robotic to me. But nevertheless, that's kind of been how people have handled these things. And then there's a signing of a listing agreement before any work is done. And then you actually have articulated your value, how you're going to get paid. And like, so it's just a big blind spot. And that blind spot has been exposed now, and it's got to be addressed. And so hopefully this will help arm you on how to do that today. But back to the truths, like I shared some of this. The other truth, like, so I actually went up to 40 million a year, 2 years in a row, just exclusively on buyer business. So I'm not telling you some hypothetical, theoretical bullshit I haven't done. This is like from the trenches, real stuff that's actually been done. Personally done it. I'm not some coach telling you to do something that just sounds really great that another coaching client told me. I'm really telling you what I did personally. Okay, so I just want to name that. I have one other hard truth for you. If you want to become a badass listing agent in the future, you got to work with a shitload of buyers now. They're going to in the future. You got.
I was going to say
here. What's that, Jim?
I was just going to say, I remember when I was in the business a few years, I went up to this agent. He kept getting all these incredible listings. And I was like, what is your, what is the secret? And he said, I sold a bunch of $150,000 houses to buyers about 5 years ago. market went up. That's
Right.
the secret to my
Exactly.
success.
Yeah. And we
Exactly.
know it's like a 5 to 7 year turn in this industry, right? Like your buyer today is your seller 5 to 7 years from now. So yes, it's going to take you a while to get there. But everyone always asks me, they're like, how do I get more listings? Well, help a lot of buyers and you will organically grow lots of listings. I pivoted over to the list side and I do buy side now as well. And I've got 2 or 3 past clients a month that are ready to go on the market, right? And so it's just kind of this awesome evergreen flow that occurs once you've put your time in. So like once you got 5, 6, 7 years where you've been in the business and you've been pushing the buy side, you can expect to have some really great listing business. And you're going to also have some serious authority if you've done it right within your sphere. So just want to share that. But let's talk about, first of all, how to set the consultation, because I think that that's a big skill gap for a lot of agents. Like this all sounds really good, but how the hell do I get people to a consultation? In our world, like there's kind of 2 things that happen. There's either like this go show kind of appointment, and then or there's a buyer consultation. The go show is like where you go show them a house and then you try to like rigmarole them back into a buyer consultation. I do not like that process at all. I like just setting a buyer consultation in my office. I know if they come on my turf that they are motivated. It's kind of a little bit of a test to see how much they really want this. And I'm going to get them in my conference room. I'm going to sign them about 98% of it. If we do that, I also know that when I get them in for consultation, that they're going to be a lot more likely to be successful, right? Like I'm serving them at a much, much higher level because I'm making sure that they understand what to expect as they go through this journey. And I'm coaching them on what's going to happen before it occurs. Where you get stress when you're buying a house is when big things come up and you didn't know they were going to happen. And again, a hard truth for you, if that happens to your clients, it's your fault. You did not coach your client on what to expect. You didn't slow down in the beginning to set the clear expectations with your buyer. So that's why I love the buyer consultation. So how do you get them there? When you're talking to people on the phone, I think there's a couple of things. You should write this down that you want to make sure you understand before you set the consultation. You want to make sure you clearly understand their motivation. If there's only one thing you get out of a phone call, it should be the motivation of that person to buy a house. That's super, super important. You need to understand that, or you should not set the appointment. The second thing, you should have connected with them at a personal level, meaning you understand the why behind the motivation. So if Ed is motivated to buy a house because he's sick of renting, I want to understand that at a really deep level. What's the pain point of renting? Is it that his rent is going up? Is that his family dynamic is changing? Is he having a child? Like, where's the personal story connected behind this motivation? Okay. Really, really important to understand that. And then the third thing is that you financially qualified them. Okay. And the way that you financially qualify somebody on the phone is really a skill set that is really important to think about. A lot of people jump right into financial questions super quick on the call, especially new agents. They're like, what's your credit score? How much money do you make? How much can you spend? And you got to build that trust and rapport before you start asking those kinds of questions. So get through their motivation, get through the personal connection, and then ask the financial questions. And the best way to financially qualify people is to better understand what their current living situation is. If they are renting a home and they're paying something that's close to what it would cost for a mortgage payment, that makes a lot of sense to set that appointment. If they're spending $1,200 a month on a little studio apartment, but you know in your market it's going to cost them $4,000 a month to own a house, that's a really big red flag. You got to flush that out. So their current living situation becomes very, very important. If they've got a house to sell, that's awesome. Now you've got 2 deals that you can pivot and set a listing appointment on. So it's really important you understand that. The best way to financially qualify them, understand the current living situation and try to draw payment relevancy from what they're paying now to what it will cost to buy in your market. Okay. The last thing, you got to make sure that the meeting makes sense for both sides. Like I've seen agents really try to like push people into appointments, and then that person ends up canceling or they don't show up. They just said yes because you pushed too hard and you weren't picking up what they were putting down, right? You weren't hearing those little cues in their voice where there was some kind of apprehension, or you didn't connect with them at a personal level, something like that. So you have to make sure that meeting is actually good for them and not just good for you. It's not good for you to meet with people that aren't motivated and qualified. Okay. That's really important to understand. If you can make them want the appointment more than you want it, that's when the show rate goes through the roof. We look for a set to met rate of about 80%. If you're below 80%, you have a qualification and a connection problem on the phone. So it's a KPI, key performance indicator that you should be tracking. If you're below 80%, look at your phone calls. You got to do better before you set these appointments. Okay. Next.
Hold on just a second there, Michael, because I think that's a really important point that a lot of agents skip over. I think that it's really, really, really important to think about this, guys. Like, if you do not have an 80% show rate for your buyer consultation appointments that you're setting, you have a conversion problem. You have a skill set problem. And the cool thing is problems can be solved, right? That's why we have masterminds like this. So just want to make it very, very clear that, like, it's really important to look internally and say, if I'm setting appointments and they're not qualified or they're not showing up, I have a problem with my qualification or, of course, my conversion. So
great point.
You move a mile a minute. So I want to make sure everybody's really getting a lot of these good nuggets you're throwing out there, babe.
And Rachel, you're exactly right on that. And I think the other thing is, I think sometimes our agents, maybe it's not you, but sometimes our agents want to just say they set the appointment when in all reality it was never a good appointment.
Yeah, that's what I call
You ain't
it.
going to get paid on appointments, guys.
It's a vanity benchmark. It's just like, hey, I was supposed to set an appointment this week, so I set the appointment, but what's the outcome I'm actually getting from this, right?
Right.
Definitely watch out for that. As you're having these conversations on the phone, like, you're going to get people that seem to like, I don't know if I'm ready to meet yet or not. And I want to give you a really great question to ask these people that kind of puts a fork in the road. Like, it's going to drive your conversation to either nurture them or to set the appointment. And I have to give attribution on this to Robbie T from Hatch Coaching. Like, this is a Robbie T textbook question that he coaches lots of people on. If you don't know Robbie, one of the top ISA coaches in the country, a good friend of many of ours. And he shared this with our team years ago, and it's something we still use today. And I just found it really valuable. I'm going to just share this with you. If the ideal home came on the market in the next 30 days, would you want to go take a look at that property, or would you pass up on that opportunity? What does that achieve? Like, when you ask that question, what are you really asking, right? Like, you're really determining if they're actually ready to start this process, right? Because people don't know if they're ready. They're unsure. Like, they're kind of caught off guard. You're calling them and they're not really sure if it makes sense to meet, right? So the way they answer that question is everything. If they say, no, I'm definitely not ready for that. Okay, awesome. What would make you feel ready, right? Like, you got to make sure you go down that path. But if they say, yeah, I probably would go look at it, which you're going to get a lot of the time if you get good at asking this question, then boom, we move right on to our closing language, which I'm going to share with you here in just a second, okay? But that's the best question you can ask, and that is the fork in the road. When you ask this question is everything, again, back to what you should have understood. You should understand their motivation. You should have that personal connection. You should have financially qualified them. Boom, hit them with this question, okay? I like to ask questions that kind of naturally lay me up to the next question I'm going to ask, and it just kind of follows this chronological order. So the close that I want to give you guys, and again, I don't want you to be a robot. I'm not saying like you got to say things verbatim, but there's a couple things that I found from studying hundreds of buyer consultations over the last 7 years. And the close that has worked really freaking well for me is this. The best thing to do would be to meet for 30 minutes at my office so I can walk you through the home buying process from start to finish, get you up to speed on the market, and identify exactly what you're looking for in your next home. I'm not calling it a buyer consultation. I'm not calling it a strategy session. All right? I'm just articulating what this is and the value of it for them. This is super, super important. I'm going to say it one more time just to make sure you got it. The best thing to do would be to meet for 30 minutes at my office so I can walk you through the home buying process from start to finish, get you up to speed on the market, and identify exactly what you're looking for in your next home. Very, very tactical. This works amazingly well. I share this with everyone on our team. The next part of it, house today at 4, tomorrow at 6. I call this the A or the B close. I'm not passively asking you, does that sound good? Like, would you find value in that? I hate that passivity. Like, just give them time, okay? And you'd be shocked how often they're just going to pick one, right? Like, that it just works, okay? So I call it the A or the B close versus being passive about it. There's some people that like to ask people if they'd find value in this meeting. I'm not that person. I know you're going to find value in it. And so I just move right to closing in on that. Jim, Ed, what have you guys found that works? I mean, I don't want to I don't want people to turn into robots, but this has worked really well for our team.
So I use the alternative close on everything, with which you're calling the A and B close, which is I give them two options, and if those options don't work, we come up with another option.
Yeah.
I move something on my calendar, but I take the approach that, I mean, based on this, what you're saying, it sounds like we should meet. It sounds like it makes sense for us to meet, have that 30-minute meeting to really go through your wants and needs. I always go into and just decide if you want me to help you.
Yep.
I would say we get stuck sometimes in not. I was at a conference this week and I was listening to some things, and this came to my mind. I don't know if you know anything about acting, like have you ever been in a play or if you've ever been on stage somewhere, but it comes down to, for an actor, they can tell when you don't know your lines and when you're not prepped. You have to know your scripts and lines first before you can act. Same way here, you got to have this internalized so you can just have a regular freaking conversation. And that is what's going to get you to these. I mean, Mike is probably brilliant in this field. He closes more deals than anybody else I know in the buyer side. And he knows his lines already. And so it's just a conversation. God, if you could just get to that point, you just do well. You do really well.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it, man. So couple just takeaways from that. Stop calling a consultation. That sounds like some kind of doctor visit you're going to go to. Stop calling a strategy session. Just articulate what it is, right? They know exactly what they're getting out of it. Okay. That's really, really important. Here is just kind of an insider tip for you on how to take that set to met ratio and take it to the whole next level. And this is something I'm passionate about. After you set the appointment, make sure you have some kind of automation that sends a video or two to these people before the appointment. I guarantee you this will help your show rate. It's also going to help your sign rate. The two videos that I send out, the first one is about a 3-minute long video that gives them the overview of buying a home. What does that journey look like, right? And we're going to cover this in the consultation. It kind of gives them a peek behind the curtain of what to expect as they go through this process. And what I know, guys, is that the next best thing to meeting with me is watching my videos, because it builds familiarity, builds trust, right? And ultimately, those are two really essential things to build before you meet with somebody. Right. The other video we send is why the Novak team? What do you do different? I get asked this question, not as often anymore, but I used to a lot. And I love this question. I made a 12-minute video explaining what do we do differently than everybody else when it comes to taking care of you as a buyer. You should have something like this. I promise you, if you do this, you will win the room before you enter it. That is everything. I'm going to give you an example. One of our ISAs, or our ISA, will set a listing appointment for last Monday. And this guy was a high D and he was an asshole to Will. He was like, hey, why do you need to know these questions? Like pushing Will around, you know what I mean? And so I got the notes for the listing appointment, and I'm a 99 D. So I was like, game on, let's do this. Like Showdown City. I'm going to go hammer the shit out of this guy. But follow the process. And the videos went out to him, and we've got these on the list side too, right? So why list with the Novak team? What do we do from listing side? And he opens the door and he goes, Mike, I just watched all your videos, right? Like totally different than I expected. So do this. Like just if you take one thing away from this, shoot videos, send them out on why they're meeting with you, what you do, how you do it, how you're different, what the process is, whatever, but make sure they get a video or two before you do them. Just a tip that has helped us tremendously, okay? So that's how to set the consultation. What about the actual meeting? Like what happens there? What's the anatomy of this meeting? How do you do it successfully? So sometimes these meetings take 25 minutes. Sometimes they take an hour. A lot of it depends on the personality type of the person you're meeting. A very high I, meaning like someone who likes to talk a lot, they're going to be pushing more like an hour. The people that are more direct or that are high S's and that are just like not going to talk a lot, then they're just listening to me. That's going to be more like the 25 to 30-minute range. So the first 10 minutes is typically rapport building, where I'm just connecting with the person, and we're having a lot of conversations about real estate, but we're connecting it more back into a personal level about like, hey, you know, you told Will that you're looking for a 2-story home, bedroom, 2-bath, and learn more about all these things, right? So really important to just have that 10-minute kind of rapport building. Don't just like jump into your buyer's. make sure you send that to them to connect with them. It's going to be essential to actually getting them to work with you, okay? After you get through the 10 minutes of rapport building, jump into your buyer's guide. Real's president, Sharon, a couple weeks ago, he shared that 89% of agents have no buyer's guide. If you don't have one, reach out to us. We'll send you ours. Reach out to Ed, Jim. We will send you something to use, but you cannot be that agent that doesn't have one. 89%, like that blew my mind when I heard that. The buyer's guide is the document that's going to lead this person to understanding what the home buying process is and what you're going to do for them. It's super, super important. You have it on the list side. Why don't you have it on the buy side? Take the time to build this and make it uniquely yours. Like you can take ours, but you got to make it, kind of unique to your own team, your own process and structure, and your own personality. But we typically spend 15 to 20 minutes going through this guide. It's pretty long, but there's only 5 or 6 pages that we cover during this guide, and then we will give it to them at the end of the meeting to take with them. The last 5 minutes is signing them. That's like the easy part if you've done all the rest of this right, okay? So I want to show you guys, again, super tactical here today. What do these pages look like in our guide?
And I just posted the link for everybody in the chat. So our buyer's guide is on a flip book, and that's a link that we also will send out and share. But I shared it with everybody in here. So you're welcome to go to that link and bookmark that and take whatever you want from it. It's totally yours to use.
Ed, can you see this okay? Okay, so this is the most important page right here. This is the timeline of buying a home. Our team has decided that we break this process down to a 4-phase approach. The first phase is the preparation phase. The second phase is the home search phase. The third phase is the offering phase. And the fourth and final phase is contract to close. This is where we spend most of that 15 to 20 minutes. I don't just like gloss over this stuff and move on. I go through every single part of it and I talk in detail about it. You'll notice on phase 1, what do I say? Well, you're going to sign an agreement, right? Like we're going to work together. And at the end of going through each one of these phases, I ask them if they have any questions. If they have any objections to signing, you're going to address it right then and there. The climate we're moving into, everyone's expecting to sign a buyer agency agreement now. If you look at the last 7 years, nobody was doing them, right? So we were catching people off guard. They're like, wait, what do you mean there's a buyer agency agreement I got to sign, right? But now that's the accepted norm. Way easier to get them signed, right? So this is a very important page. And what you should do is just take your process, map it out, and be able to articulate it. The buyer agent versus listing agent roles, like what is that? You got to explain agency. What does a buyer agent do? What does a listing agent do? What is my job as I'm representing you? Why should you not go directly to the listing agent? Why is dual agency a bad thing for you? Very, very important to cover this, okay? Closing costs. And this is going to be something that's fluid as these changes roll out on who pays what. But we're going to just share with them what the buyer pays and what the seller pays. If you don't tell them, they don't really know what to expect here. I've had people say weird things to me like, I want the seller to pay all the closing costs. I'm like, okay, which part of the closing costs? And they're like, I don't know, the closing costs, right? Like they think that the buyer is going to pay the commissions or like before and stuff. And so you just got to articulate it, make sure they know what to expect there. The other one that's really important, we are in a super competitive market. So if you're not in a competitive market, this isn't as relevant to you. Variables. What will make your offer come across as really strong to the seller or be perceived as weak, right? Very important that you go through this. This takes a couple minutes to cover as well. Then we get to the next steps. Ed, would you like us to represent you, be a real estate agent? Look them dead in the eyes and then just shut the hell up. Let the question just saturate the air, okay? Like agents get super nervous, so they start being like filling that with a bunch of small talk. Just ask that one question. Ed, would you like me to represent you? Well, of course. Okay, awesome. Here's some paperwork to sign, right? Next, we'll get you pre-approved. Next, we'll go tour homes and find your dream house. Boom, we're off to the races, okay? It's that simple.
I think the level of certainty that provides people, people are really unsure in this process, right? Especially first-time home buyers or people who haven't done it in a really, really long time. They're coming into this like, I don't know what to do exactly, what order I should be doing this. So our job is to provide that framework and say, out of every single meeting, out of every single interaction on the listing side and the buying side, of course, now too, is these are the next steps. The next step is we decide to work together so I can get to work for you, right? Like that's how this rolls. So very, very important part to establish the next steps as let's work together. Would you like to or not?
And you got to be confident. You got to be confident through this process. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, you're good. Anna, does this work? Yes or no?
Yeah, and I just started doing it and signed 100% of the people that I met with. So just
And you-
follow
Yes,
it.
she did.
You role played the hell of it, right? Like you got like 20, 30 hours of role playing buyer consultations together where we nitpick like everything you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're presenting your confidence, everything, right? So get the guide created and then role play it. Super, super important. Anna's done a great job of really taking this and running with it in our business. Fantastic work, Anna.
And I was just saying, you got to be confident in this. So Anna, were you confident the first time you did it?
I was, because I practiced with Mike like 20 times to the point where I'm like, okay, I already know what to say.
But you
And I
probably
can
weren't
say it with my eyes closed. I literally practiced it on every drive into the office. I would go through phase 1, I would go through phase 2, I'd go through phase 3, I'd go through phase 4 and explain it to like my sister and everything. So
But when you started and didn't practice, you were probably a little nervous, right?
yeah, I couldn't even get through explaining phase 1.
And because of your practice, you became confident because you knew the scripts, and it was really easy just to go in and say, I'm the expert now, which is important. I'm the expert, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. That's what you're doing, and I can only imagine. I'd love to see you do that presentation one day. That's awesome.
I was traveling the last couple of weeks with our family for vacation, and so when I travel, Anna jumps in, does the consultations, and she did 2 consultations, signed 2 people just using that exact process. So if we can do it, y'all can do it too.
Good job.
What did we miss, guys? Ed, Jim, Rachel, anything else? We got a couple minutes if there's any questions, guys, too. Feel free to jump on. You can put it in the chat box. You can hop on, ask it direct.
We didn't miss it, but we definitely have to practice. I mean, that's just as key as anything else in what you just said, Mike.
Yep. Practice. Absolutely.
Yes, George. I did put the link for the flip book to that exact buyer consultation or buyer's guide here in the chat if you want to click on that link. Yep. So people are asking in the chat, Michael, of course, copy of the buyer's guide and then the videos that you send out. Do we have those like unlisted in YouTube or somewhere?
They're listed videos on YouTube. Yeah, I can share the links. I think I'll put them up in
Yeah,
the
let's organize the links so we can send a follow-up email out to the database.
put up in the Agent Growth Hub, and we'll set up the follow-up email as well. But we'll share the videos. And again, like you don't have to do exactly what we do, but these are just some ideas on what's worked well for us.
Do you guys actually do a hard copy of something and leave behind when you're there or when you meet, Mike?
Yep.
Something that's sticky?
Yep.
Cool.
So, some like
we have the flip book just to send it and so they can see it on there, or if we're doing like Zoom buyer consultations for relocation clients.
Right.
But yep.
I was gonna say I give them the option at the end if they like it or not, and most of them take it with them. So oh, Rach, can you repost that for George? He can't.
Yeah,
see anything.
I'll reset. Yep, I will.
Okay. Awesome. Questions, guys? Come on, jump on. There's got to be something. Are you doing anything like this right now? You got your buyer's guide dialed in? You're not one of those 89% of the agents that don't have one?
Well, and I would say, are you disciplined in doing that?
We've got ours. We just have to revise it. I'm trying to get to the point of non-referral business, so to grow our sphere. So we've never had to actually call leads and stuff. So working a whole non-direct referrals is a new thing for us.
Gotcha. Nice. Awesome. Good deal. Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up there, guys. We'll be back next week again on Thursday. Rachel, do you know the topic offhand for next Thursday?
I do. I can look it up here. How to build a value proposition for winning listings.
Nice. That's a good one.
Speaking of.
Take these buyers
Awesome,
and
guys.
spiders later. We got you.
Exactly. Love it. Let's build a business. Bye, guys.